Hi, so welcome back to the final installment of the color block-in for the Apple tutorial. So at this point I am going to start smoothing out some areas in my drawing and just making those colors a bit more definite and a little more saturated. So I'll be pushing the lights and the darks as well, just to really create that contrast. And also trying to smooth out some of these edges around the apple so that it blends into the background a little bit more. So I'm going to get started with a little bit of green and try to softly merge this light area here. Just rub right up against the apple edge just to keep that from stealing the show. I'm just doing this very lightly over any areas where there's a sharp, outline or a high contrast jump in value. So I'm on step 8 in your handout. And like I mentioned the last time, I did push the green with more artistic license than they did in the handout. So it's your choice. You can follow the handout exactly as you wish, or you could go in another direction and do a darker version of green like I did. So let's repeat a little bit of the burnt sienna color to tone that green down just a little. That spot there. And it's good to keep bouncing around each time you move around your drawing so you don't get stuck in one place. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a transition in this red area and the yellow. Just try to, again, smooth out those edges. Depending on how the light hits an object, it creates both hard or soft edges. And having that variety of edges, something like that is a little bit harder. It helps to create that illusion of form. So I'm just using my finger to try to create a bit of a transition. But not everything has to be blended in. So that's another point. Sometimes it's enough to, just use that pastel and, lay it down. And just leave the marks there. So you want to try to avoid overblending. You can get muddy colors and it's not as interesting to look at if everything is just flatly blended. So again, I'm just looking for more areas of red where it's repeated. Trying to take down any areas of high contrast where I don't want them. Like maybe here too, since this is a shadow area. And I feel like I kind of lost that stem, so maybe I will redraw, just give that stem a little bit more definition with a little bit of the yellow ochre. So then I'll just add a little black just to give it a little contrast. Maybe some yellow just to lighten that edge. Now we just have a little more, So I'm also going to soften that background a little as well so that the contrast doesn't distract from the apple. So make sure that you have a clean finger when you go to blend so you don't get any unwanted blending or any muddy colors where you don't want them. So there's nothing wrong with muddy colors, but if it's not something you want, it isn't going to look good. It's actually good to have some low intensity colors in your painting so you can have the emphasis where you want it to be, which in this case is on the apple. So if everything were saturated, your eye would be bouncing around everywhere, and there wouldn't be as much of a point of focus, especially if you're going for something more realistic. If you were more on the abstract side, that would work for you, but for this project, I'm trying to go for more realism, so more of a balance of muted and saturated colors is what we're trying to go for here. So let's just, maybe I'll leave a little, some of it maybe unblended. Okay, so I want to move on and not get stuck in one area. So we're going to move on to where the color starts to get a little bit cooler again. Put some alizarin and some red. So if your fingers get too dirty, you can always use a paper towel to do your blending. Just wrap it around your finger like that. Or, just go back to using your fingers, but just be careful. I'm going to go back and add a little more of that. It's like an alizarin crimson. It has a little bit of blue added. So it's starting to get cooler as we turn towards the shadow areas. And I'm also going to keep, looking at my reference just to compare, what I'm doing. I'm comparing this and this at the same time. So that's an important aspect of doing a successful painting, is continuing to look at your source photo and your painting. And if you can, put it on an easel and step back and look at it from the distance from time to time, or take a break. So I'm going to push this shadow area. It's pretty dark. And then maybe create a little bit of a soft transition between that alizarin. Put a little bit more red back in here. Okay. So if I really want to get that dark, I'm going to add some green to the blue mixture. And then last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to very lightly go over it with black, but not very much. Softly brush over it. I don't want to lose that pretty color I had. And I might even leave some of it a little unblended just for fun. Since pastel is, both a drawing and a painting, you can